Welcome to Goosebumps. Welcome back. Has Slappy scared you off, or are you coming back for more? I hope you're coming back for more, because it is a little bit spooky, but it's what we love. We are, of course, reading chapters 31 and 32 of R.L. Stine's Slappy World, the first of the Slappy series. Let's get started with chapters 31 and 32. Slappy lowered his hands. His head drooped forward, and he collapsed onto the Camry's trunk. The garden hose swooped to the floor. The mower and the car horn became silent. A hush fell over the garage. The two boys, drenched and shaking, watched in the sudden stillness of the garage as the garage door raised itself. Mr. Barker stood in a gray sweatsuit. He peered into the garage, and his eyes went wide with shock when he saw the chaos and damage. "What on earth?" he cried. "We didn't do it," Vinny shouted. I don't believe this," Mr. Barker stammered. "Everything on the garage floor. Everything? It's all soaked." "I swear we didn't do it," Vinny insisted. Mr. Barker kept blinking and squinting. His face had turned bright red. He shook his head. "No, this is impossible." "It wasn't us," Johnny said. "Vinny is telling the truth." Mr. Barker turned to him, as if seeing him for the first time. He squinted from Vinny to Johnny, trying to focus. "You two," he finally managed to speak. "What are you doing in here? Why are you in the garage?" "It's kind of a long story," Vinny said. "We didn't do this. Seriously," Johnny repeated. "The dummy did it. We were returning it and it went crazy." Mr. Barker turned to the car. He saw Slappy folded up on the trunk, his head down between his legs. He gazed silently at the lifeless dummy for a long moment. "Guys, you're in a lot of trouble," he said finally. "We need to get your parents and have a very long talk. Look at my garage. Look at the incredible mess you made." "But," Vinny started. Mr. Barker raised a hand, motioning for him to be quiet. "I hope you two can explain why you did this," he said, shaking his head again. "But I have a feeling you can't." All three of them turned to the open door as Ian came running into the garage. "Hey, you found Slappy," he cried. "Where was he?" "Your cousins took him," Mr. Barker said, speaking softly. "He didn't walk out on his own after all." Ian gazed from Johnny to Vinny. "You took him?" Vinny nodded. "It was kind of a joke." "The damage to my garage isn't a joke," Ian's dad said. "Sneaking into our house late at night and stealing something that belongs to Ian isn't a joke either." "It was just a prank," Johnny said. "We didn't mean any harm." "You've done a lot of harm," Mr. Barker told him. "But it was the dummy," Vinny started. Mr. Barker pointed to the dummy, still and lifeless, sprawled face down on the car trunk. "You need a better story, guys. That one isn't going to work." Mr. Barker stepped forward and lifted Slappy off the car. "So, you see, Ian," his father said, "you can relax now. It was your cousins. They took the dummy. The dummy isn't alive. Slappy is completely harmless." Ian didn't reply. He knew the truth about Slappy. He knew his father was wrong. All four of them left the garage and strode across the driveway towards the kitchen door. Ian was the only one who saw Slappy tilt his head and mischievously wink one eye. Chapter 32. It wasn't a happy morning in the Barker house. Mr. Barker had to call Johnny and Vinny's parents and tell them what their sons had done. They all had a long talk. The Hardings agreed that the two boys would be grounded for a month. Johnny and Vinny had to promise to clean up the garage and make sure everything was put back where it belonged. "And you have to stop telling dumb stories about Ian's ventriloquist dummy," Miss Harding added. Johnny and Vinny grumbled to themselves. "Why doesn't anyone believe us?" Johnny asked. "Because you're liars," Molly said. Mr. Barker backed the car down the driveway to make it easier for the two boys to clean the garage. Johnny and Vinny worked for an hour. They piled the garden tools back onto the shelves. They rolled up the garden hose and slid it back onto its holder. They worked for the rest of the morning, but there was still lots to do. While the boys worked, Ian brought Slappy up to the attic. He locked him in a trunk and made sure the lock was tight. They all had lunch together. Then Mr. Barker disappeared downstairs to his doll workshop to do some work. The 4 kids stayed at the lunch table, having chocolate chip cookies for dessert. Molly sat at the head of the table, hugging Abigail to her chest. Vinny pointed at her half-eaten cookie. Do you want the rest of that? Molly swiped up the cookie out of his reach. Of course! You're not getting it, fat face! Vinny sighed. Listen, can we have a truce? Seriously? Molly eyed him suspiciously. A truce? Do you even know what that word means? Vinny nodded. He lowered his voice. The 4 of us have to stick together. We have to stop fighting all the time. Johnny leaned over the table. His usual grin had disappeared. His face was pale and serious. Listen to Vinny, he whispered. Your dad is wrong, Vinny said. He's totally wrong about the dummy. Ian squinted at him. He knew Vinny was right. You know as well as I do that Slappy is alive, Vinny said in a voice just above a whisper. He messed up your garage. Johnny and I aren't that stupid. Why would we want to get ourselves in trouble? We didn't. Molly laughed. Are you trying to scare us? You should be scared, Johnny told her. Slappy is alive and he's dangerous. I know you're telling the truth, Ian said finally. At the talent show, Slappy said all those rude, horrible insults to everyone. I didn't have any control over him. He was alive. Molly hugged Abigail a little tighter. If it's true that dummy is alive, what are we supposed to do about it? Just leave him locked up in the trunk? Maybe we should cut him in half or something, Ian said. No way, Johnny answered quickly. He has powers. He can hurt you. He slimed Vinny and me. He burned us really bad. And you saw what he did to the garage, his brother added. So how can we be safe? Ian asked, his voice just above a whisper. Vinny tapped the tabletop tensely. He told us what to do. He told us how to put him back to sleep. Huh? Ian's mouth dropped open in surprise. He ordered us to find that slip of paper, Vinny said. The one with the weird words on it. He doesn't want anyone to read those words out loud again, Johnny added, because that will put him back to sleep. And he wants to stay awake forever? Vinny whispered. So he can make all of us his slaves. Where's that paper? Molly asked. We had it down in Dad's workshop. Did you take it, Ian? Ian wrinkled up his face. I don't remember. He shut his eyes, thinking hard. Maybe you left it downstairs, Vinny suggested. Ian nodded. Yes, maybe I left it on Dad's work table. Vinny shoved his chair back, scraping the kitchen floor loudly. Come on, hurry, Ian. Let's go look for that paper. Ian led the 3 others down the stairs to his dad's doll hospital. Under a bright light, Mr. Barker leaned over a doll at his work table. He had one hand pressed down on the doll. His other hand held a glue gun. He turned in surprise when the 4 kids marched up to him. Hey, what do you want? He glanced at Molly. Is Abigail broken again? She shook her head no. Ian saw the sheet of paper immediately on the corner of the work table. We need that paper, he told his dad. He made a grab for it. To his surprise, another hand came from behind and grabbed for it too. Ian gasped and stared at Slappy. The grinning dummy pushed his way to the work table. His glassy eyes were on the paper in Ian's hand. How did you get down here? Ian stammered. Never mind, Vinny shouted. We have to read the words. He grabbed for the paper from Ian's hand and began to read. Karu Mario Donna. And just what happened when he was saying that? Guess what? Cliffhanger. My favorites, cliffhangers. Chapters 33 and 34 tomorrow. So, answer your 2 questions. Complete sentences. Almost done with the book. So exciting. Complete sentences. Do the fill in the blank. We'll see you next time for chapters 33 and 34.